Welcome back. In this episode, we are talking about a very common thing that happens in the evangelical Christian church all over America, the famed moms groups. Oh my goodness, because we have this feeding into that we're gonna be stay-at-home moms and we don't work. And so they need to have these moms groups, but then they get out of hand and there's too much drama. So we shut them down. And this seems like one of those ministries that at Come As You Are has been like turned over and changed and morphed and just dealt with it's like a putting out a fire kind of thing. And so we are going to dive into the moms group experience from our perspective. Faith can feel like hearts and butterflies until someone lights a match and burns it all to the ground. Welcome to the Burning Butterflies podcast.
The sad thing is that there's abuse of every kind within the church. But the spiritual abuse is the stuff that just
What's a place there shouldn't be abuse? Like, there just shouldn't be abuse in a place that claims Jesus.
Well, it ruins your soul. If you're new here, we suggest listening to our prologue episode first. This is the story of two women's journey through spiritual abuse and escaping from toxic church culture while finding hope in Christ.
Sometimes it's just the facts, and if you get offended by it, that's a you issue. And if we can't be mature enough to have these conversations, even if some of the topics are difficult, then shame on us.
Like I talked about when I first came to Come As You Are, there was a moms group and it was called Morning Munchies. And we got together and we just kind of let our kids play and, very, very low key. It wasn't put out there in the church bulletin or anything like that. It was kind of word of mouth. You just invited people, right? And so when that group fell apart because the leader, one of the leaders of that group, it was two women. One of them, her husband was the guy who was doing youth group and got in the yelling match with Pastor Tom.
Yep.
And then just
Yep.
dipped. And so his wife was one of the leaders of this moms group. And so before they left the church, moms group fell apart because it came out that this mom and a few of the other moms in the group were very into passion parties. And they would throw passion parties and they would discuss which products from passion parties they all had and enjoyed the most. And it came out during a mom's group that the youth leader and his wife had a sex swing in their room.
And that's just too far. Too far. We've gone too far.
Yeah, too much information was shared.
But we can't even be talking about
Yeah,
stuff.
you don't talk about stuff like that in church. That's something that is done behind closed doors. No one says things out loud. Heaven forbid, it is something that women talk about that is actually enjoyable for them. And so it all went to hell when this is incredibly ballsy. I will hand it to them. They showed up because they decided they were going to host a passion party. So, the old ladies would come to church on a Sunday morning with their little Pampered Chef party invitations in the church lobby. They had passion party invitations and they're doling them out to ladies in the church lobby. And Charlotte.
Well, and those parties are also MLM. So they've been coached that this is sex positivity for
Yeah.
women. So
Yeah,
I'm
well,
sure
that's what I
that
think
played
is
into
And
funny
it.
is like we have this whole I mentioned before, you have this, you have to stay home as a woman, and right before,
Mhm.
where we're at in our timeline, that was the message that I got. And as a career focused working woman, I worked really hard to be a stay-at-home mom for like a year and a half or so during the era right before this time. And it was miserable for me, but you can't survive in the economy even then. You can't survive now. A single income home is nearly impossible. And so women need to bring something to the table financially. And so these MLMs, you name it, you've got like what, Pampered Chef, Norwex, I don't know, selling essential
Oh, yeah, I forgot
oils,
about
like
Norway.
everybody did their,
Scentsy,
yeah,
Avon.
lotions, creams, kitchen products, you name it. Yeah.
Mary
And so, those, it's all great. Yeah. Bring your Pampered Chef pamphlet and invite all of your church girlfriends because you got a network and you network with the people close to you. And so, of course, these people, that's what they're going to do because that's the structure that these MLMs have you do. Like list 100 people, invite them to your party. Well, then you're also in a church
Right.
environment that is isolating you so that the only people you're associating with are the people that you go to church with.
So yeah, so Charlotte gets handed an invitation. Charlotte flips her crap, like absolutely loses it. I am in Master Life at this time. And maybe it wasn't Master Life. Maybe we're now that I think about it, I think it was Love and Respect, one of the first times we did Love and Respect. But anyway, Charlotte was Tom and Charlotte were in the Bible study, and Charlotte went off on all the ladies there. And like, so, you had like some of us, like younger gals, like knew what was going on. Some of the older ladies had no clue what anything was.
Oh, yeah.
And they, they were like mortified that women in the church were doing this. And so that mom's group was disbanded. And so, we're talking, this is like,
Yeah, I wasn't even at the church at this time. This is early.
no, this is like
Yeah.
2007, 2008, somewhere around
Oh,
there.
wow.
So we didn't have a mom's group for
Right.
years. Fast forward to like 2012, 2013, the pastor's daughter-in-law, not Melissa, but the other one, was doing children's ministry, and she was building Thursday night services and children's church and things like that. So everyone who was involved in that, I would have them all over to my house once a week, and we would plan out that week's lessons for that Thursday night. And so that kind of evolved into, we enjoyed meeting once a week. We would come together, our kids would play, we would have coffee, we would do, ministry work, but we would also share, and we would also, like, we got to know each other and we became friends. And so when Thursday nights kind of went by the wayside a little bit, we wanted to continue to meet together. So I started having people just kind of like in that fall, winter of like 2013, I started having people come to my house. I would just invite my friends once a week, and they would come over. And again, the kids would play, we would drink coffee, and we would just hang out. And I got in trouble because it got out that I was inviting people to my personal house, my friends, having my friends over. But that was I was excluding people from the church.
Right.
And
You weren't
we don't do
inviting
that.
everybody from the church. It was just
Yep.
this group of people that it was almost like a small group or a life group for moms.
Or like normal humans, I
normal
was inviting my friends to come over for
human.
coffee once a week.
Exactly. You're like, and this is where, when a church can tell you who your friends are and what you can do and you
Yes.
cannot do, like you are in a very toxic situation. And so, yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy. I do remember
Yes,
you having
so-
those meetings, and I was not on the preferred list. No, I was not offended by that because, like, you and I were not like, we weren't in the same circles. Like, I knew it was going
Yeah.
on. I knew that it was happening, but it wasn't like I was on the outside looking in being like, "Why am I not invited?" This time frame is when I was like I had started doing, like, data entry at the place that Froggy was working, so I was working my
Uh-huh.
part-time job, like, as a personal trainer and, such things like that, and then also a part-time for the company that he worked for, and
Yeah.
still trying to be a stay-at-home mom,
Well, invite
provide
like,
financially.
would you invite yourself, or am I the only one?
Did you invite yourself
No.
to Amanda's private mom's group?
No, because by the time
um,
Brandy got there, I had gotten in trouble, so we had to make it
Oh,
public. Um,
when I invite myself to a lot of things.
it's just
but so but before this, there was a lady, like, in that span where we didn't have a mom's group, there was a lady, um, that tried to do, like, during the summer when your kids were home from school, because again, we're all stay-at-home moms. We are all at home all the time. And so when your older kids are home from school, then all of a sudden your routine is off and your big kids need to do more, but your little ones, it's easy to keep littler ones at home and do things at home for them, but the bigger ones get bored. So she called it Summer Fun Club, and they would go to parks in, like, other towns. So there is a park at a town, I don't know, probably 20 minutes away from us, and it has, like, big giant grain bin silos and stuff like that, it was a farm and they turned it into this big giant park, huge slide and, all of that kind of stuff. So we would go to these big parks in bigger neighboring communities, and we would rotate through where we were going during the summer. And so, Melissa, you and your kids came to
Yeah, I had
those.
attended a few of those, because that's exactly the era of, like, I work part-time, I'm trying to be this 1950s housewife in my house and keep my husband happy, um, and so we're doing things, and what I think is funny about that is that my husband would go to those because it had to be so inclusive, like, now that you mentioned, like, you getting in trouble for not being inclusive, for excluding because you had just a small group of people that all happened to go to the same church and come over to your house because they were your friends. Like I have pictures of all of these moms and their kids at the park, and then my husband is there. God forbid
Yeah.
we do anything leave him out of anything. I don't know. Yeah, we went to a few of those. We did.
Yeah. So that lady, I mean, she would go all out, but she, like, homeschooled her kids. So she had all of this stuff. Like, we did tie-dye in the park one time. We made homemade bubbles one time.
Yeah.
Like, so she would load up all of this crap and bring it to this park like 20, 30 minutes
Yeah,
away.
and she celebrated the
And
kids who had summer birthdays too, because like, they didn't get to celebrate their birthdays at
yeah,
the school, and
uh-huh.
so she would help do that because we did one of my kids who has a summer birthday there, and yeah, that was fun.
Yeah.
Like that.
So we did have fun those summers. I loved it. I was doing daycare at the time, and so I was able to, load up all my kids and take the whole daycare. And by the time we were done and we got home, everyone was wiped and they took a nap for the whole afternoon. So that made my day great because my entire daycare would all nap at the same time. And so she did that. So I get in trouble for having this small group in like 2013. So going into the summer of 2014, after Agency D3, um, like in that episode, Brandy, you had mentioned, like, we did mom's group. Yep, we did, because I had it planned and ready. There were moms that complained that when we did the summer fun club, it was too expensive. They couldn't afford to go out of town because, like, then they'd have to, like, either pack a lunch, or like moms were getting like McDonald's and bringing them to the park, and kids were upset about that because, like, my mom gave me an Uncrustable and this mom's given her kid, Happy Meal. And so it was,
And then I was like, crap, we're supposed to
yeah.
feed.
So it was causing problems. Plus there was a couple moms Because I mean, keep in mind, this is coming off of like the recession and, the housing market crisis and all of that. People are just starting to rebuild. So there's a lot of people in our community that don't have, more than one vehicle. So if your husband's at work, you don't even have a car at home. There were several people like that in the church. And so it was like, well, I can't go because I don't have a car. And, I have 4 kids. So to ask someone for a ride, that's kind of impossible. And so it was decided that summer after Agency D3BB, I would do like a summer park gathering, like at parks, but it would all be local in our town. And I found parks in our town that I didn't even know existed. And so we would, rotate around to all of these different parks, and we made it super short. It wasn't like we were doing crafts and stuff. It was like, hey, come hang out for a couple hours. You want to stay and do lunch and spend the day in the park? That's great. But, we're only going to be here from this time to this time, a couple hour chunk. Come hang out. And then everyone's free to, do what they want afterwards. And I had to put that in the bulletin. I had to make that public because heaven forbid I have friends that I want to spend time with my friends. And so I made a map of where we were going to be, what dates we were going to be there, all the things. And that went out to everyone in the whole church. And so we had like grandmas who were watching their grandkids for the summer. We did have some grandmas who got like custody of their grandchildren. They would come. And so that's how Mom's Group kind of started. Was we did that summer park series, and then we really enjoyed spending time together. We all realized it breaks up your day. You don't want to just sit in your house and do nothing for, we would try to do it in the middle of the week because then you kind of spaced it out. You knew you had church on Sunday and you knew you had the park in the middle of the week.
Yeah.
And so you only had to make it through like 2 or 3 days alone with your kids in your insanity and your depression of being a stay-at-home mom.
And then you got some adult
You only had to-
conversation.
Yeah, then you got to go and do something. And so
Yes.
we tried to break up your week a little bit with that. And like, yes, that's what we were doing. But at the time, like I couldn't have verbalized that's why we were doing
Right.
it.
Well,
in the
because
middle
that's the
of the
thing,
week.
and we'll get back to this, but just to bring this point up before we dive into the dynamic of Mom's Group is Mom's Group is an amazing thing. Like getting this group of women together who would otherwise not have adult conversation, to be able to share their life experiences and go through things together. I mean, that's what we want. That's what we're supposed to be doing. And so it's good. The problem is not that things come up. The problem is with the culture of the organization that you're involved in, depending on what things come up. And then instead of dealing with them and handling them, because life is messy, and when we all get together and we start talking, we realize that you're not the only one who's got the struggles behind closed doors that you've got. So then we start talking about these things, which is actually healthy and good. But if the organization is toxic, that it gets shut down. And at the end of the day, then you feel like women, I mean, the message at Come As You Are was women can't be friends. Women can't get together because it always turns into something negative and something bad because we're not going to deal with the reality of life.
Exactly.
And then we don't want to
Exactly.
talk about what's really going on behind closed doors, because when you get the 6 women together who are all being abused behind closed doors together and they start talking about it, then we have to hold some men accountable, and we're not going to do that.
Exactly. So eventually that summer park thing led into we were going to meet in houses, but like it evolved very quickly. Like there were women, Brandy was one of them, who was like, it's not fair to Amanda to have everyone over to her house all the time. So then we started rotating through houses. So like 2014 and into 2015, from that summer to summer, we were in people's houses, but we would rotate through whose house we were in every week. And that just turned into a giant crap show because, like, at one point, some grandma who didn't know better, like, posted a lady's address on, like, a public Facebook group, and, like, the lady had a panic attack, but then, like, moms who weren't comfortable having people in their homes were ostracized because, like, why aren't you taking a turn? And that just turned into a whole mess. But, Brandy, you came right after Agency D3 when we were in the parks.
Yes. Because I believe it was the next week. Like, we cleaned up VBS, had hot dogs, went to church. I was home like 2 days, and then we are at the park. And also, I was dealing with when I had filled out my communication card, a lady from the office had called me. So now she's calling me every Tuesday to check in, whatever. But she's always asking, did I join this? Have I gone to this? Whatever. So I have my like checklist of what I need to be doing. So I decide, okay, we're going to the park. And I'm a little nervous because I've had very little contact with anyone with kids at BBS. Because I'm with all the grandmas in kindergarten and preschool. So I don't really know any of the moms. I know your guys' faces. I kind of figured out who's who. And so I'm a little nervous. So we go to the park and everyone's very welcoming. But my perception is you guys have been together since you got pregnant. Like, you formed the groups in pregnancy, you gave birth together. A lot of the conversations are birth stories, which is fine. I mean, that's how you connect. So I'm thinking, like, this is really a tight-knit, long-term group. So I have boys, and at this point in time, like, Johnny does, which, I mean, he still doesn't really talk, but he doesn't talk really at all. He's super attached to me. He's having a hard time adjusting, whatever. So we're at the park, and I see this woman who at the time, I don't know, she's very, very hearts and butterflies, but I like her sunglasses. So I'm like, oh, I'll just go hang out with her. And then I experienced Amanda's daughter, her daughter, and another woman's daughter, who are very verbal, very articulate, come over and explain what is happening about not getting along, feelings getting hurt, and this huge thing.
Because they're all toddlers. They're all like 3 or 4.
Yeah. Yes, they are very much strong in their perception of what's happened, whatever. And hearts and butterflies starts talking, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, no, I can't stomach this. So, because there's no accountability is what my problem is.
Because like me and the other woman were like, okay, well, you guys have to figure it out, and if you can't figure it out, then you need to come and ask for help, but we're not going to tattle over everything every 2 minutes, right? And so we're trying to help our kids see how they can resolve the problem for themselves. But the hearts and butterflies lady is like, oh, did you feel excluded? Did you feel left out, to her daughter? And so then it's like making it worse for her daughter, instead of just being like, okay, well, all of you probably were mean to each other at some point, and we all just need to
Wait, no, it's the public shaming. Oh my goodness, how as a mom, you would shame the other mom by the way you talk to your kid, where
Yeah.
you'd be like, oh, did that
Mhm.
little girl hit you? Yeah, honey, sometimes,
Yes.
not in our family, but sometimes other families, they don't teach their kids properly. And so we have to deal with that.
Yeah. And so it was very much like, because Amanda has a mouth, Amanda has taught her daughter by proxy to have a mouth. And it's not like my daughter was walking around being like, "What the hell's wrong with you, you idiot?" Like, I mean, like, we were still very much drinking the Kool-Aid, but she was very strong in, like, her, like, "No, this is not right. You should not do this." And,
Yes.
so it was a lot of, like, this girl would Hearts and Flowers' daughter would constantly get her feelings hurt, but again, they're, like, 4, and so kids learn to manipulate at a very early age. So this girl would learn to all she had to do was cry and tell her mom she felt left out. Like, and what 4-year-old can walk up to their mom and be like, "I'm feeling very excluded and they're being bullies to me and they're excluding me and it's hurting my heart." Like, I mean, that's taught vernacular. And so,
Yes.
yeah, that just turned into a whole mess. But Brandy, you brought up something because we all bonded. That's basically what we did is we sat there and we shared our birth stories. And then when a new mom would come in, everyone would share their birth story all over again. The fact that I know the nitty-gritty of every single woman in mom's group, how they gave birth to every single one of their children, like, that is a phenomenon that does not happen regularly. Like, at jobs, I have never had a job where the women sat around and shared their birth stories. I don't know about you ladies, like, as you're working
Well,
in the
I'm a
world, like, I mean, does it come up? Like, this year there was a teacher who
no.
was pregnant and she was asking, like, "Hey, is this normal?" And we would kind of share, like, it comes up, but it was not a, like, one of the first things out of your mouth, like, "Oh my gosh, your kids, tell me about having your children."
The grandmas would share theirs too. So this isn't just you have a 2-year-old and you're traumatized by the birth still and you're sharing, it's a very much used as a connector in this
Yeah, because I
group.
would
Yeah.
say in my experience of, like, the workplace and everything, like, do things come up? Yes, in the natural course of as soon as somebody's having a
Yeah.
baby, you gotta talk about it, but it's not like you're in the workplace and all of a sudden every woman would go around and start sharing. Like, you might or it might be, like, relevant to if that mom is like, "Oh my gosh, they want me to take this test. Oh, you're gonna have to drink this nasty stuff, right?" Okay.
Yeah.
It would be a
Correct.
conversation like that.
Yeah,
It wouldn't be, "Oh, let me tell you about," like, I have 5 kids, and no, in the workplace, I have never told every single one of my 5 kids' birth stories to anybody. And I
Yeah.
didn't experience
And
'cause
then
something that we need to remember, so, like, at this point, like, this is what you ladies experienced as stay-at-home moms. I was I was working side by side, um, in a workplace with my then spouse because that's the only way that we could be happy was if we spent every moment together.
which that's the
well,
only way you
even
were allowed
for
to work. That's the only way women were allowed to work. If women were working with their husbands or if their husbands said, "You need to get a job," then it was supported that women have a job. But otherwise, it
what?
was expected that you stay home.
Well, this is also the time of mommy
Yep.
Oh,
bloggers,
yeah.
YouTube, reality TV is very much um the Duggars, a baby story, even mainstream society is very much there's a lot out there about being a mom. I watch trashy reality, so I would watch shows of rich people having their first baby. And so there was a big from 2008 to like 2014 society as a whole. There's a whole bunch
Well,
on
yeah, because
being a
that's the
Well,
mom.
7
And I
mountain
really,
mandate, like, we have to infiltrate, and
yep.
so these Christian broadcast networks that are able to now get the behind the scenes Christian view on, oh yeah, and courting and all of it, of course it's being pushed out in the media because it's part of the project. And so you're right.
Yeah.
Right.
Wow.
And even on my trashy being
Yeah.
picked at in a
You
different
have
way.
the Duggar mom who their daughter was stillborn. That's blasted all over television. This year, 24, the movie
Oh, yeah.
Mom's Night Out comes out, and it's a Christian movie about Christian stay-at-home moms, how inept the dads are to have to stay home with the kids, and the craziness that ensues from the moms getting a mom's night out. And that lady in the movie is a mommy blogger. And her blog takes off because she talks about her mom's night out. And this is the era of Pinterest moms. This is the era of all of this. So we're sitting there and we're comparing our birth stories with each other. And you're secretly sitting there because, you have a grandma who's like, back in my day, we didn't have epidurals. We just did it like real women. Well, yeah, honey, because they put a mask of ketamine on you and you passed out. Like, that's how you've made it through there. And so, like, you're being judged, you're judging other people. And so when you have this, like, someone like, oh no, I did it all natural, or I gave birth at home in a tub and it was beautiful. And, you have someone like me who was like, I walked in and I was like, I want the dude with the needle, with the epidural waiting for me when I get upstairs. Like, he needs to be there. You wheel me out of the elevator, I want stabbed right in that moment. I am done. I want an epidural now. Like, and so then you're being judged by these other moms because everyone is comparing, my trauma is worse than your trauma. So I have a better story than you have. And then you have women who have just like gnarly stories. Like, there's women who went to mom's group who like seriously damn near died, or like had to get completely stitched back together down there, and like awful stuff. And the fact that we know this about each other is very, very weird. Like,
Right. Well, and what's funny too, because I come in and I know this game, I'm churched. So I'm changing my narrative at this point. No one knows how old I am because I do not want to be the person that my last child was born at 38 years old. I don't want to be that person. I also, it is June, I had a miscarriage in April. And I've had a lot of miscarriages, but this miscarriage, well, okay, so I couldn't get pregnant with Johnny. Had Johnny, he's the second coming. Then when I actually have him, I'm like, this is what I'm doing. Like, what? Then I am not supposed to have any more kids. I get pregnant with Joey. I am pissed off the entire 9 months because you said I'm not having any more kids, and I'm having another kid. I have one in diapers. We're losing our house. I have no money. Fast forward to Colorado. I find out when we move to the town that I'm pregnant. We're buying a house. So now I'm like, this is the pregnancy that is going to be the way it's supposed to be. Well, then I have a miscarriage. And so I don't share this information with anyone. I'm not even sure if my mom knows. I believe Jason's mom knows. Maybe.
well,
I
it
don't
was
know.
years before you shared it with me, even.
Right. And so
I just found
then
out.
I've also done fertility, and I don't want to admit I've done fertility because why wouldn't God bless me? Why do I have to use
Yeah.
fertility? And I've had a ton of miscarriages. I don't like you to give me a hug. I don't like the poor
You don't need
whatever.
casseroles?
So I don't need a casserole. And I come from a place of negativity. I am not going to see.
We're not using come as you are vernacular anymore. You don't come from a place of negativity. You come up from a place of being realistic.
Yes. The miscarriages were not blessings. The pregnancies were not blessings. My body should have not been put through that trauma over and over and over again. Somebody should have done something about it because at 35 years old, you are already high risk. So for this to continue all the way into 2019 is ridiculous. So I am not going to share any of this. I'm going to pretend like I'm everyone else, that everything was a piece of cake. But in reality, I'm still traumatized even from my first son's birth. The second one wasn't a problem. I've had a miscarriage that I basically, my grandma did know, because she told me, because I was further along than I normally would be when I would have the miscarriage. And she would like, this is what's going to happen. And I don't go to the hospital. I don't do anything. I don't, Jason, I'm like, it's gone, whatever. But we're so used to it. It's like, did you take out the trash? So it's not dealt with ever. And I'm very unhappy about it, because not, and this doesn't sound terrible, not because of the baby, not because I wanted a baby, but I wanted what was going to make me feel better, because in my mind, I am miserable because I didn't get pregnant when I was supposed to. Everything has been a struggle. I am an old mom with a toddler. So I'm sitting next to Hearts and Butterflies. I'm hearing the way these 4-year-olds talk. My 3-year-old is wearing a diaper, not a pull-up, a diaper. He will still put a pacifier in his mouth, and if we would let him, he would still be breastfeeding. He is very much a baby. And so I don't want the judgment. But at this time, I also don't realize that the little girls are expected to act much older than they are in this environment. But the boy, I will soon see, it's okay for Joey to be a baby forever. And I see another mom who was kind of with me during VBS. We just kind of like had a few little like, this is crazy conversations. I don't know how many kids she has, whatever, but I know she has a boy around my youngest age. So I see them over by the slide, and we go over there. They start playing. Well, this other little boy comes over, throws mulch at them, which I'm like, big deal. Kids do that. You just brush it off. Don't do that. It's not nice. I would never go get the mom and be like, he just, Well, the mom I'm with is very, very, very upset that this has happened to her child, that someone else's child would purposely throw mulch at them. Well, she yells across the playground, and, I'm thinking these are deep, deep friendships. It's Hearts and Butterflies' other kid. So now my second experience in 1 hour is why the 3-year-old is throwing mulch at people. It's not really his fault. We have to have this long, drawn out conversation. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, it's mulch. It's mulch. Like, pretty soon my kids are going to get in a knockdown, drag out, and wrestle in the mulch. So the dynamic is very strange to me, because half of the people are, let's just keep it moving. They're toddlers, play nice, don't come tell me. And then the other, we're giving dissertations to these kids on how to act biblically. But it's the ones that are hurting other kids or not being nice that we're making this big deal about their feelings.
Try being the one in charge. So then every time someone would get upset, they would come to me and be like, well, Hearts and Flowers, her kids did this and this. So like, I don't know why you let her come to these things. Because I have to. Because Tom and Charlotte chewed my butt about it, and I am in trouble. And so I have to. Mom's group becomes so stressful for me because of these dynamics, because I am the one who's trying to keep the peace between everyone. And so then I come off as being controlling, and I I feel like I have to be in charge because I'm the one who organized it all. That wasn't it. I was trying so hard to keep the peace between people because I'm getting from Charlotte all the time, like, hey, it can't turn into what it was last time. And, it was very dysfunctional last time and it was not honoring God last time and all of these things. And so I was under all of this pressure and I wanted it to keep going. I needed it to keep going because it was my saving grace.
Right. I think it's very interesting. Like Brandy pointed out, like just such an interesting dynamic of you said a couple of things. One, you said you knew exactly how to behave because you've been churched, which means that you had experience in a church organization previous and it played by the same rules. At least in your knowledge of, you were like, this is how church is done. Now maybe it did and maybe it didn't, but you came in thinking this is how church is done. And then so you also were watching this catty judgmental comparison, and so you didn't want to be judged, and so you were very aware of like, okay, I need to behave a certain way to fit into the culture of what is going on here, and you molded yourself into that. You're not the only one who's done that, but then you also, your reality and your gut feelings and the things that you have going on are like, well, that's crazy, well, that's crazy, well, that's crazy. And that is like mind blowing to me, on the fact that we all do that, but that these narratives, like we mentioned, are bigger than one single church. And like the things that were coming out in Christian media, the things that were going on in other churches across the country, bits and pieces were being seeped in to Come As You Are. And all of those women coming together, we're all trying to be a part of this culture and bring whatever piece they agreed with. And how, like you mentioned the fertility thing, and later on there's somebody who, like, there was nobody, I would say that was not an issue for anybody. Like, you were probably the person who brought this concept and now we have to deal with it. But then there was somebody else who had kids that they had conceived through fertility treatment, and it opened a big can of worms at the church. And now we have to talk about these topics, but these are things that were never talked about before. And so it's like play by play, making decisions on how is this specific culture going to be run and deal with these things. And it all comes to that hierarchy. Like Amanda said, she's dealing with all of this from a level of I'm leading, right? And it's so funny that it's like a negative thing to be in control. Like, no, you need to be in control of these things. Like, there's a leader and the leader is navigating that. And when you come into like,
But I wasn't a leader. Like, if
right,
you ask
no,
Tom,
you weren't a
I was
leader, but I
not the
mean, like,
leader.
but you're leading,
Jesus is the
right? But
leader.
you're
I am the facilitator.
exactly, but you're that's what I'm talking. That's exactly what I'm talking about. You are
Yes.
middle management in a church, and so you're doing exactly what my job is like in a restaurant. And so you're navigating. Well, I'm sorry, but if you're in charge and you're not controlling things, that's not okay. Like, you but then you're being criticized for being controlling when you have to navigate and you have to be the one to, I mean, anybody in management knows sometimes you have to make the tough calls and you consider everybody's participation. And the goal is to have a win-win situation. But unfortunately, sometimes people's feelings get hurt, or sometimes people have to stop their behavior. Like, you're in charge. You can't allow these things to happen. So you have to be like, hey, you need to knock your stuff off and you need to step up a little bit. That's the role of a person who is leading and in charge. And the fact that it's being used against you as like you're controlling and you have to try to make everything your way is a narrative that's being given from the leadership in the church to people. So now, rather than your boss, basically, I'm going to just relate this to business. Like, as somebody who's participated in middle management, I have to keep guests happy. I have to keep employees happy, and I have to keep the owner happy. Well, if my owner's not on my side and going behind my back and undermining everything I do, our business is not going to be successful. Like, that is outright toxicity. And I've worked in places like that when that's happening in this church structure, because now you have people who are like, yes, a lot of people like live for their job, I guess, but we're talking about spiritual and soul and emotional things and identity issues. Like your identity is being shaken. Your identity is being formed in these groups. And when your leadership is going behind your back and undermining your identity, like that is so damaging and so toxic. And for what? Like these groups, I'm honestly glad that I didn't participate. This is like so not my jam. But just listening to these stories and being like, it is possible to have good groups where women come together and women can be friends. And it's okay for women to meet in smaller groups and connect. I don't need to connect with every woman.
Well, here's the thing. If all the women that were part of like the core of this group that were serving in the church are all educated, all had some kind of career type job before they had kids. So these women have a skill set that they're not allowed to use. And now they're being forced to identify as a woman that is happy to stay home, mop her floor, make bread, have sex with her husband on command, and change diapers. And she is supposed to be 100% fulfilled. That is where mom's group becomes a problem. It is never catty women, because none of these women were ever out to get each other. Part of it was mama bear culture. Another part of it was their own trauma. So they overcompensate so their kids don't experience anything negative.
Well, they can't. They got to have perfect kids. And you
all
got
of
to
us,
have this perfect dynamic.
right? And all of us have, yes, stay-at-home mom depression. We all have it. So we are all coming to this group masking. I 100% had a plan of how I was going to be perceived, who I was going to be. And I sat back that summer and watched everyone to see what roles they were already fulfilling. And I could mask pretty well to a certain point. But when I start to become closer to Amanda and I see the turmoil she is being put through, I cannot have that. So to help Amanda, I go behind the scenes and try to fix things in a way of saying exactly what's happening, no sugarcoating, which then goes back to, well, it either goes to Charlotte, then back to Amanda, and then now the problem is triple the size because we don't want to be honest. And so when we get to the houses in the fall, lines are already drawn.
Yeah.
And it's not because people don't like each other, don't want to be friends. Women are jealous of each other. Women can't be friends. It's none of those narratives. The real problem was women were being forced into roles that made them miserable.
And they were being forced into friendships that honestly, like, if you were just allowed to build friendships on your own, half those women wouldn't have chose that group as their friends. And there would be nothing wrong with that. This is something that came out as I was going through therapy after I had left, was the fact that I became the measuring stick and the amount of pressure that put on me, because I drank the Kool-Aid so well and I served the Kool-Aid so well that I became that measuring stick, and other people would use me. And so Charlotte would be telling people, "Oh, you're having trouble at home. You're stressed out. You're having a hard time, organizing with your toddlers or whatever, you should go to mom's group. Amanda can help you. Other women are saying, oh, you should talk to Amanda. So I am being used against these women because I am shoving myself into a box very successfully at this point. And so even though I want nothing more than to look at Hearts and Flowers, Mom, and be like, have you lost your damn mind? Your kid is 3. He doesn't need a dissertation on the Beatitudes right now. He needs a swat on the butt. And you need to say, stop being a little jerk to your friends and go play. Like, I wanted nothing more than to say those things, but I couldn't. And so I was successfully shoving myself into a box and being kind. I was running around and making myself exhausted because I was trying to keep the peace with everyone. The verse that Charlotte would constantly say to me, well, as far as it depends on you, you need to live at peace with one another. And so that became my, I have to make sure people are living at peace with one another. I am serving selflessly. I am killing myself to serve. I'm giving everything I have, mentally, physically, financially. I'm giving all of it. And I attend everything. Anytime the doors are open, anytime we're doing an event, I am there. And so I am the epitome of what a come as you are woman needs to be. And you guys have mentioned it before. I became that bane of your existence because I was what you were held up against. And no one realized that, honestly, it wasn't me.
Well, the sick part is
was
that instead of helping you, instead of you being helped through the insecurities that you had, or, we talk about the issues that why were we the perfect prey, for a cult? Well, because those issues, the church is billed that it's supposed to help you with those things, but those exact issues you were being preyed upon for, and they were being used to turn you into a version of you that you're not. Like, it was that were the weapons. Your insecurities were weaponized against you.
Yeah, 100%. And everyone's were. Every single person there was. And so, there's women who walk up who are instantly don't like me because I have been this measuring stick for them. There's women like me. I'm not the only one, but there's women like me who are so thankful for mom's group. And we're going home and we're telling our husbands, and our husbands are seeing a difference because, again, he's not coming home and I'm still in sweatpants with no makeup on because I'm overexhausted. I've had something to break up my week. I have something to, okay, friends, we got to be nice because if we don't, be kind to each other, or if we don't clean up our toys, we can't go to mom's group. And so I have incentive for the kids in my house to behave. I have something I can look forward to. And so it fixes that depression in me. And I guess that's a poor choice of words.
Yeah.
It doesn't fix it. It Band-Aids it.
Well, it gives you some
Yeah.
dopamine.
And so I have something to look forward to. My husband sees a difference. Other husbands start telling other husbands. My wife goes to mom's group and it's awesome. She loves it. The kids love it. It's great because even when dad comes home at the end of the day, what did you do today? We went to the park. We played with this. We went to so-and-so's house. And the kids are happy. The wife is happy. And so it's like, this is awesome for us. And so husbands start telling other husbands. So then you have husbands who are strongly, I don't want to say forcing, but very strongly suggesting and pushing their wife into mom's group, even though they don't want to go, but they feel like there's something off with my wife. And mom's group seems to have fixed it for these other women. Maybe it'll fix it for my wife. And no one can just say what it really is. Like Brandy hit the nail on the head. These women had a life. They had dreams. They had aspirations. They had talents. And now they are deduced to nothing more than a wife and a birth story. And so they have nothing left of themselves. They are a shell of themselves. And now they're being forced into relationships that they wouldn't have chosen on their own. Like you said, Melissa, like, this is
Right.
not my jam. No, it wasn't a jam for a lot of us, but it was all we had, and we were
Right.
being forced into it.
Well, and that's what I want to say is the little scuffles that were happening between the kids. It was more of an amusement to me. Like, it wasn't a deal breaker. I wasn't thinking like, I'm not going back to that mess. But it's just important for what happens down the road. So these park experiences are super positive for me. Because I know any group of people, there's going to be kids that don't get along, adults don't get along. But I leave that summer with, this is great. And by July, because these women are also serving in multiple ministries. So there's one day at the park where Hearts and Flowers is like, I got to go do a care call. And I'm like, what's a care call? Because somehow I keep ending up with this woman. And we are complete opposites, would never, ever be friends in real life. But I keep ending up with her. And she tells me about the care ministry. She says to Amanda, can you watch the kids? I got to run to the church office. And anyone who's running to the church office during the day is a very important
Yes.
person. And I start to realize that the very important people also are the people with degrees, real jobs before this. And I start to be like, well, hey, I can, this is what I want. This is why I'm here. Please give me something to do. So Amanda says, yeah, run over there. I got the kids, whatever. So then I start talking to Amanda about what's the care ministry, what's this and that. And so I'm like, sign me up. I will do care calls. That is right up my alley. And so you also are networking this group. But the problem is you have the people like myself who want to be all in, want to serve. And I'm telling myself that I'm doing this all for him. I want to serve people all for him, which part of it is true because what we go through before we get here, the church we're at's version of the care ministry saved us. So I do want to give back to people also. But I also
Yeah.
want a very important job. And I
No.
never would
But
have
do you
admitted
feel like, because I was in the same boat when I came like to the church of like, I'm done being the person who's needing. And so my verbiage coming in was like, I'm looking for places to help because I'm done being the person who is taking. I need to be a giver. And I ended up working in the same ministry, you know, and like doing all that. And I designed the logo for that ministry, like, because I was all about, because the church I came from too, like I was helped by their ministry that was the same as this one. And I was like, no, it's my turn to give back. And so I was definitely looking for all of those opportunities of like, how do I get into a place where I'm not the needy person, but I'm the giving person and I'm helping and I'm in charge, not in charge, like,
well,
not like I'm looking for power, but I did the same thing where you're looking for,
it's not power though. You want to use, because let's be real.
right.
You run a restaurant. You
Yeah.
are good at that. I've seen you run big things at the church. You thrive in that. So you do want that, but we're told
Right.
like we shouldn't want those things. And it just boggles my mind because that's the real thing where the real problem is, and it'll be blamed later on women
Yeah.
just
The
can't
narrative is
work
definitely different
together.
than what the actual
Which,
issue is in these circumstances. So it moves from this whole
Well,
park thing. Now you're back in people's houses again.
yeah, so we're in people's houses, but this is where we really start to see, you start to see the people who, my kid get along with your kids and it's easy. And it seems like our kids never have problems with each other. And so you start to see these little groups. It's friendships are forming
Yeah.
naturally. We're all forced to
Right.
come together in this mom's group thing. But then we start to realize, okay, the woman who's running children's ministry, Brandy and our kids get along. Our kids can get along well. Our husbands get along. Brandy and the woman who she has a son who's like Joey's age. Joey and that boy get along well. And so you start to have these. I never went to that woman's house to hang out, but Brandy would go to that woman's house to hang out. So we started doing what I got in trouble for. That evolved naturally.
Right.
That came out that women were hanging out. So now that started to break up our weeks even more, because now you have church, you have mom's group. Well, now you have actual friends that it's easy. So then you can break up your week even more and do flating.
Right. So I have a question before you continue. So Brandy, what narrative are you being told from people in leadership of the church at this point? Do you have interaction with anybody in actual what the church would consider their leadership? I mean, other than Amanda?
Only the woman in the office. I have not, I've only spoken to Tom the one time at VBS. It's June. So I am attending church. I'm sitting with the woman who loves everyone still. And the woman that has, I'm going to call her the skinny girl. The skinny girl, I sit with her and the woman that loves everyone. This is in front too. So
Yep.
you said, Melissa, that when you got to the church, you didn't want to be the person in. So this is partly
Right.
why I don't share fertility. I don't share miscarriages. I don't share financial struggle. We came here, Jason has a huge contract with a huge oil company. So we are going to thrive here. I am going to help the world now. So in the end of July, I'm asked by my neighbor that has 4 kids. They are struggling horribly financially. And our kids play together out front. She is the breadwinner of the family. Her husband is in the basement playing video games. She asks if I will watch her kid. And she pays me, and I don't remember, but it's not a lot. And I don't care because Jason's making a lot, and I am giving back and helping the people, like, because I was helped. So when we go to the houses, this also changes some dynamics. The first time I go to Amanda's house, so her old house, you would go upstairs to get to the family room. I am a mess already, and I always have a giant purse, a Marshall's bag, and I just bring a lot of crap for no reason. So I have a newborn. This newborn is like 6 weeks old. I have a 1-year-old, 2 3-year-olds, a 5-year-old, and a 6-year-old with me. So I have 6 kids, 6 years and under, a brand new baby. This mom that I'm watching the kids, she had just given birth. She has to go right back to work. She is also super depressed, miserable, and I am going to save her. So first thing I'm doing is I'm watching her kids and pretending like her husband is not home in the basement. So I send all the kids that can walk up the stairs into Amanda's house, and they come in loud. Everyone's sitting on the couch, the perfect church ladies, and the disaster rolls in. So all these kids running up the stairs. No one's expecting me to bring all these kids either. And for some reason, I bring the freaking stroller up the stairs. So the 1-year-old can barely walk, so I'm trying to get him to walk up the stairs. I have a newborn baby, and I'm dragging the stroller up the stairs. Amanda's dog is on the stairs with me. The newborn starts screaming, and the woman in charge of children's is like, "Did you have a baby?" A newborn, like. So I get in there. I have like 50 bags with me. I'm like, I gotta feed the baby. And like, it is just, you get the real meat, like the real meat. But it's kind of a good place for Amanda and I at this point, because the woman in charge of children's is like, oh, I am not going to be part of this. And the skinny girl is like, I only do people with 1.5 kids. Like, I'm not doing this. And Amanda is like, oh my God, you were me a year ago.
I have one more question for you, Brandy. So are you participating, besides going to service and in mom's group, are you participating in anything else?
I'm trying to do care ministry.
Care calls, right?
I have done 101. I have been asked to be the lead, or not the lead, to be the kindergarten teacher.
Okay.
And I don't remember if this happens in August. I think it is August is when I become the kindergarten teacher. But I think everybody knows I'm going to be the kindergarten teacher. And we're just waiting. And so
Yeah.
I am not going to any women's things, because most women's things, you have to be invited to. So even though it will be put out in the bulletin on Sunday, when you're involved in these groups, so we're sitting on Amanda's couch and someone will say, hey, did you get a message from Charlotte that she wants to have a women's meeting? And so then you have 6 moms saying, oh, yeah, I'm going to do this. And I'm going to feed my kids, because everyone has to have this huge execution. So there's no extra work for their husband.
Right.
But then you have about 4 or 5 other women who are participating, but they do not get the invite. Even though
right. Can we talk about that for just a second? And so it's very interesting. And this is such a huge dynamic, especially now that I can see it from your perspective in the moms group setting. And so in women's ministry, like the goal is to be on the first contact list. And that's just how I'm going to put that. And so when there are women's events, when a message goes out for the entire church body of like, hey, we're doing a women's event and we are looking for volunteers to help plan, set up, run, like the very first, if you're sitting in church as a woman, this is the first message that has gone out to the very, very first, to the entire church body. This is the first message of, like, we don't even have a date yet necessarily. Like, we're going to be doing this women's event. What you don't know as a looker on or bystander participant in the normal realm is that there has been weeks, if not months, of planning this event, and that there is a planning team, the pre-planning team. And as you move through the structure and the hierarchy of women's ministry, if you want to be in leadership of women's ministry in any capacity, like somebody who's in the know and doing things, and because you have opinions, and like you're like, you learn really quick that if you want to criticize something, your answer had better be, I'm willing to step up, because that's what you're told. Like, well, if you didn't like it, you should volunteer to serve on it so that you can have a say. So there's weeks of meetings with people, and it starts with Charlotte. And then Charlotte has a select few people that she picks to have, hey, we're thinking about doing this event. What do you think? Are you on board? Meetings with. And then those 2 people or 3 people, maybe 4 people. It's very small. I want to say it's no more than 3 people.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are events, if you remember, Brandy, that it was you, me, and Charlotte. We were the first meeting. And then the 3 of us become 6 of us 9 of us, but usually it's just the 3, and then eventually it's such a small handful of people, no more than 5 before it gets announced to the entire church body. So those conversations in mom's group, I just want to point them out because they will become problems later when you have, let's say it's you and me, Brandy, and Charlotte, and you and I start talking about it because we don't realize that it's a secret. And now you have 10 moms in mom's group who aren't getting these conversations, and they're now up in arms, and this causes a big problem.
I'm going to women's breakfast. I'm doing all the things, and I am not getting an invite.
And I'm getting my ass chewed that how dare I have friends over for coffee? I have to invite everyone. But
Right.
Charlotte is planning events with 2 people before she invites everyone. And later on down the road, I
multiple
ask her
secret groups of people. Like
Yes.
Yeah.
And by the time I get to the point where I'm getting that invite, I'm getting included on that secret first planning stuff, I ask her about it, and she says, well, when you're planning an event, you get too many women with too many opinions, and it is the women have nothing better to do with their lives than be catty with each other narrative. So too many women with too many opinions. So we have to have at least a small plan in place. Otherwise, women start fighting.
Yeah. And the other thing is in the name of discipleship and mentorship, we can have meetings with smaller groups of people. And so, Brandy, like, I asked all those questions, like, just to get an idea for our listener, like, where you were at. You hadn't joined women's ministry yet. You're participating in mom's group. You're going to church. Like, you're doing all the things. Because Amanda and I shared, where we were at in this process when we first started going. And I know that your journey of how you started drinking the Kool-Aid. I don't even think you had to be offered Kool-Aid. I think you came in, you said, where's the Kool-Aid?
Yeah, do you want me to pass it out? I know how to do
brought my sippy cup. I need some Kool-Aid. Yeah. And then Amanda, like, during this time, like, where are you at in your, like, have you started working in the church office yet? Is this before all that?
No. So I'm still volunteering and I'm doing admin. But I am definitely being pushed out of the office. I need to stay out of the office. And so I can do admin for other ministries, and it's the ones that the ladies in the office don't want to do admin for. But there's a reason, like, they just don't want all that stuff in the office. And so I am having to do a lot of stuff from home. And so my life pretty much revolves around doing ministry stuff at home, being a stay-at-home mom, and running moms.
Right. So I've gone from trying to be a stay-at-home mom, because can't do that. 1, I'm too feral for it. And 2, like, the unstability. What is the word? Instability. Thank you. The instability of Froggy. So he wants to live up to this. He has been culturized to live up to this 1950s. He's supposed to be the man. Your wife is supposed to, be seen and not heard. This is all coming out in the dynamic of our marriage, but financially, he's not able to support us. I've got 5 kids. He's got a huge child support bill for his 2 kids. Like, it's just a mess. And he thought it was just magically going to be okay. And then I start working. So now we're working Monday through Friday. And I've said this before, but we're working Monday through Friday next to each other at the same place. We go to work in the morning, we come home. And so things are peaceful in my home, but I'm happy because I have a job, but my miserable is the longing to participate in the moms group. Like I said, I'm glad I didn't, because that's not my jam, but I am definitely feeling like I'm shamed or shunned, or it's not okay for me to be a working mom. Like, that's not okay. It's okay in my home because it keeps my husband happy. So I'm serving on the worship team and I participate with all of them. And my groups have to be involved. Like if you're going to do a Bible study, it's with your worship team. If it's going to be your life group, is the worship team. Everything needs to be around, everything is centering around the worship team. And that's how I'm serving. But like, I am longing and desiring, because there's got to be, everything that's wrong still has to be because I'm not, like, the goal is we're working towards me being a stay-at-home mom so that I can go to mom's group. Like, and I don't have a
Right.
lot of friends because I don't
And
go to
that's
mom's
important
group.
too, because when I start going to meetings and stuff, I am very much selling, why aren't you at mom's group? You're at work? Well, why are you at work? And it
Yeah.
that creates a whole bunch of problems. But no one corrects me on that because that is supposed to be sold.
Yeah, that's the narrative. And what I see from the outside looking in, all I see is a bunch of happy Christian moms who are completely and totally fulfilled, living the dream, the Christian mom dream. I've got, I'm home, I'm with my kids all the time, I'm filling them with Bible knowledge, I'm protecting them from the evil world, and I get to go and be in this wonderful group of moms with community, and it's one big happy, this is what you're supposed to do family. And I want that. And instead of enjoying my, life to the fullest, being who I'm supposed to be in my career and doing what I'm supposed to do that fulfills me, I'm working and just constantly desiring and wanting this narrative that isn't even now, you find out it's not even what you're supposed, like, it was all a scam.
It wasn't real.
It was all a scam.
None of it was real. Because we were all miserable. We were all miserable. We were all depressed. And none of us either had the balls enough to say it or the knowledge to realize that's what was going on.
Burning Butterflies is a listener-supported podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by our amazing supporters on Patreon.
Follow the link in our show notes to learn how you can become a Patreon supporter too. Supporters get exclusive access to bonus content each month, including outtakes, cut content, and supporter-only episodes. If you've enjoyed this episode, please leave us a rating on your listening platform.
Burning Butterflies is a production of Asha Media. Thank you for listening.